Hey, Dean, thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm happy to have you here too. It's first of all so fun for me to know that you and Chloe Bullock, are good friends because Chloe was just on the show maybe about 2 months ago by the time you're hearing this episode live. And we talked about how her and I have known each other for 7 years and we've never met in real life. And that's bonkers to me because I feel like she's one of my closest friends. And then, of course, she's a colleague of yours and you've done panel discussions and all the things with her over
Exactly.
there,
And
right?
she's the one that put me on to you.
Ah, there we go.
And of
That's
course,
my
I'm now
girl.
obsessed because I thought I'll just listen to one or two to get into the swing. And now I can't stop listening.
That's the thing. We like get you and we rope you in,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
That's awesome. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you today, Dean, because you have recently wrote a book. It's called City Style for Rural Living, the New Country. It's a beautiful book.
Thank you.
It is published by REBA, the Royal, tell me what it stands for again.
Royal Institute of British Architects.
Okay, I could have done it, but I didn't want to screw it up. And I learned something from you a few moments ago that I want to share. And I think it's interesting because, maybe designers know this. There's things that designers know, Dean, that I don't actually know. And they're like, I'm sorry, we all knew that. But sometimes I teach them something. And what I didn't know about the Royal Institute of British Architects, did you
Yes.
say?
Yes.
Um, is that when they publish a book, it is with the frame of mind that it's educational to the industry. It is not necessarily, and it is definitely not, for the enjoyment and for the enthusiasts of design. Maybe it's a beautiful book and an enthusiast could enjoy it, but their criteria for accepting you as an author and the content that you put out is different. And I didn't even know that when Chloe was on the show. Tell me a little bit about that, Dean.
Yes. So because they're the organization that represent architects in the UK, and unlike interior designers, an architect can't call him or herself an architect unless they belong to the organization and have got the correct training and insurance and everything. So the organization is very keen on setting standards and educating. So any book they publish, so it was a bit different from mine because I wanted it to be pretty as well, you know? So our one is kind of a mixture between a textbook and a coffee table book, giving inspirational images and
Yeah.
ideas as well as factual tips and things like that. So, but that was a bit of a change for them. But normally it's like they're mostly written by architects, not professional writers, and it, very detailed, maybe um, about a particular aspect of historical architecture or a city or regeneration or whatever. So it is very educational, and they don't
Mm.
want it to be just a sort of PR thing for one architect or designer. So
Mm.
yeah, I was only allowed to use 20% of my own work. But luckily, the 20% I do use is my own house in the country, which is the kind of narrative thread that runs through it. So, I was
Yeah,
pleased.
it's very beautifully done,
Thank you.
cleverly done. And that was the thing that I noticed and pointed out to you, right? I'm like, there's a lot of work from other designers here.
Yeah.
What's that about? And you're like, it's actually a rule that only 20% of your own work can appear. So that it's not a PR endeavor. And as you said, it's not strictly a coffee table book for entertainment, that there is the educational component to it. However, I will tell you, it doesn't read like a textbook, like it's informative, but I am not an architect, I'm not a designer, and I'm enjoying the book. It's not like I'm like, oh my God, please turn the page and
Yeah.
stop talking to me about square feet. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
it was. I had my editor that I carried on working with was actually on maternity leave at the beginning, and I had a temporary one. And when I submitted the first chapter, she said it's very chatty. But I was like, oh God, it's not serious enough, I'm not being architectural enough. So, but then the regular editor came back and she said, we need a bit of chatty. So, as long as you get the
Ah,
information across, it's nice
yeah,
to not, have people yawning after chapter one. So hopefully it's a good
exactly.
balance of
That's
really
what it
good
is.
information, but it's, put across in an
That's what it
accessible
is.
way.
It's kinda like wrapping up the broccoli inside the butter and the cheese. That's what
Exactly.
it feels
Yep.
like. How
And
I get
fewer
my kids to
calories.
yeah, I guess how I get my kids to eat broccoli. I'm like, "Look at how great this is. It's smothered in garlic and butter and cheese. Like, there's a vitamin somewhere down there."
Exactly.
So that's awesome. Very good. Okay, so the focus of the book and the focus of the conversation that we wanna have today is obviously so many designers like yourself have been since COVID, particularly, but I'm sure all of time, right? Faced with working and helping a client that either their primary residence is in the city or the burbs, and you've done their work, and now they have gone out and purchase the country house, whatever that means. In the States, it could be the lake house, it could be the mountains, it could be the beach, it could be whatever it is. Um, and you want to teach us some of the guiding principles for good practices for designers just navigating. We're going to do follow two lines of thought, one at a time. The navigating with the client, like helping them really uncover the similarities and the differences and how design has to be similar or different. And then we're going to talk about the trades and working with the trades in the different locations. So start us off with the things that you have experienced that we need to think about when you're going to go work with somebody who's been in the city and has been your client and now they've purchased this quote unquote country house.
Yeah. Well, I think, as you said, things really changed after COVID because not just in the UK, I think around the world, people
Hmm.
kind of started to leave cities at a younger age than they would before. Because, before, while your children were in school, you'd be there and maybe you'd have a weekend house, but you wouldn't think of spending a lot of time in the country until you were maybe coming up for retirement. And
Yeah.
now I think there's been a big surge of younger families going out, or, either hybrid, they still keep a place in town, or they literally go out because both parents can work from home a lot of the time. And it just made me think that we don't have to have that divide between your like really stylish contemporary city pad and your maybe like chintzy full of pillows country house. And how could you, you know, um, change the way people think of their country house, not as like a
Mm.
completely separate thing, but as part of their life that they live, whether it's in the city or the country. But of course, it's not as simple as that because people can't live exactly the same life in the city and the country, especially if it's in a really rural place, like I am
Mhm.
now in way north of England, just on the border with Scotland. We don't
Mm.
have delivery, we don't have Uber Eats. There's, the nearest restaurant is 10 miles away.
Oh
Um,
my gosh,
so there's
I'd
all those,
starve.
there's, there's all those sort of lifestyle things. As before you even get onto the design of the house, it's just the lifestyle thing. And I think part of the book is like, are you sure you want to move to the country? Because it is different.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, it's funny because I can think of like, you just mentioned the whole thing with the food there, right? Like maybe I don't think I would go to my interior designer for that advice, but if I finally heard it from you because you're the first person who said it to me, my family didn't
yeah,
say it to me, my realtor didn't say it to me, my colleagues didn't say it to me, but that would be for me legitimately. Listen, all the years I had kids in the house, I cooked dinner every night. Believe me, I paid my dues, but it doesn't happen anymore, right? But even when I was cooking dinner every night, you still had the weeknight off. Like there was
mm,
that one night where you're just like, nope,
yeah,
not happening. Everybody get in the car. We're
yeah,
going to, Frank's Pizza or
yeah,
something, right?
yeah,
And so I can imagine how I would have to think about my kitchen design differently from like it's a big joke in my family. You open my refrigerator, you're going to get blueberries, yogurt, cottage cheese, pickles. Like I don't know, there's not a whole lot else in
yeah,
there ever. Okay. There's not even condiments because there's nothing in my house to put ketchup on. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't even keep it there. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? And so, if even if I was a mother of young children and my habits were to go out 2 or 3 nights a week, right? Like that's a different kitchen setup. As a designer, you got to talk to
yeah,
me because maybe you did my kitchen here and I didn't need as much storage for produce or root vegetables or freezer storage or something, right?
yeah. No, exactly. The kitchen is a really good example, actually, because most of my work before was in central London, and out a bit like Manhattan. The apartments are mainly small,
Yes.
Even the grander apartments tend to have a smallish kitchen. So that the idea then was to pack as much in as you could. A little bit of storage, the microwave and the big oven. Whereas in the country, obviously, you usually have a lot more space. And exactly what you said about some people say, well, I don't cook that much. I don't need a big kitchen. Well, really, you're going to have to, or you're going to have to get the lady in the village to come and cook, because if you have to drive 40 minutes to the nearest restaurant and the neighbors are going to, I don't know if it's an English thing, but here, and it was a real learning curve for me that I've never had so many dinner parties, because all the neighbors are really good cooks, and they'll just say, oh, come for a
Ah.
kitchen supper, which is meant my idea of just like, have macaroni cheese and some wine or something. No, it will be like, it might be in the kitchen, but it'll still be cooked from scratch. And
Wow.
yeah, so even if that's not your thing, you need a big kitchen. And the other thing,
Oh.
it's kind of more of a meeting place in a country house, I think, because before I moved to the country, sometimes you go and had quite a grand house, and there'd be this beautiful entrance with a portico and steps up, and they say, "Oh, come around the back. We don't use the front door." And I'm like, "Why are you great? Why are we going around the funny back door to the kitchen?" But because of mud, and or if in the beach,
Oh.
so you tend to come into people's houses in the country via the kitchen. So again, it's probably the first nice room you're going to see.
Oh.
So you need to put a
Oh.
different thought into it to a town kitchen, I think.
Right, right. So when you have worked with clients making this transition, are like, have there been people that have been surprised that they pretty much get it there, but they're now asking for your expertise on how to make their kitchen suitable for this new lifestyle? Is it
I think there's a bit of
oh,
both, because some people, say pre-COVID, they've been thinking it was always their dream to have like a place in town and a place in the country. So they've been thinking about it. Maybe they'd rented places before to get an idea of the area they wanted. So they've probably got more of an idea, and they've maybe socialized in the country, so they realize it's a bit different. But I think there's the people that made quite hasty decisions in COVID. Yeah, we're going to work from home, and they're the ones I think you need to advise carefully. Like, really is
they're
different.
sitting in the kitchen starving. They're like
Yeah.
bone and, skin and bone going, "Nobody fed
Yeah,
us."
yeah. Believe me, I do miss takeaway. It's one of the town things I miss, is takeaway pizza and Chinese.
Isn't that funny? Okay. And then are there other things from if you're a designer and you're working with a city person who's going out to the country that you have found that are considerations? Like, I guess mudrooms are probably a much bigger consideration,
Oh,
right? Not a
absolutely.
perfunctory one, right?
Yeah. Oh, essential. And there's some great examples in the book, not just of mine, of other designers, where they've kind of combined maybe a laundry room and a mudroom, or even a bath for the dog, because the dog's going to get
Yeah.
muddy running in the forest or
Ugh.
whatever.
Ugh.
So I love one of the best ones was, in fact, it wasn't a country house; it was in a sort of suburb of London. But they had a big garden, and they had the wife. Like, she's a lawyer, so like really. Um, Very demanding day job, and her relaxation was like gardening and arranging flowers. So they had this room that was like the flower arranging room, the husband's wine cellar, and the dog bath. And I just thought it was the most amazing thing, and very stylishly done as well.
That's it. It's like, who needs a study? Who
Yeah,
needs a family room? Who needs a TV room? We need a garden room. We
yeah,
need a wine bar, and we need a
exactly,
dog bath.
exactly.
Priorities,
Yeah,
right?
and it was little dogs, so the bath was just the right height, so you could leap in and out, without
Oh,
hurting
that's
himself.
good. That's good. That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. And so, again, just anything that I'm not thinking about from that side of guiding your client. And are there times when, Dean, maybe a client actually doesn't see the difference, the need, the vision, and you've had to say, listen, I also have a house in the country. You don't think you need it, you're
Yeah,
going to?
exactly. Yeah. Things like, the working from home thing, because a lot of the people that have moved,
Mm,
they can maybe, I know big companies and corporations are encouraging people to go back, but still a lot of people, maybe 2 or 3 days a week. But even those 2 to 3 days a week, you need really on it Wi-Fi. And so if you've got,
yes.
particularly in England, a lot of the old houses like stone walls, they might be 2 foot thick walls. You've got to think about the broadband going through that whole house, and things like that. So no point having a beautiful, great big paneled office in your country home. You can't get onto the Zoom call.
Right.
So there's the
So
practicality
is
of
that
things, but
something that you're taking the lead on with the AV people that you're
yeah,
bringing into the house and all of that stuff?
yeah,
You're making sure that you're thinking about
yeah.
that.
And the other interesting thing with the working from home aspect is, like, for example, I've got two places I work from in this house, summer and winter, because this house was an old church. We kept the main living dining area as like with 22-foot high ceilings and stained glass windows and things,
Wow.
but freezing in the winter. So
Ah,
the room I'm talking to now is my like winter office because it's cozy
okay,
upstairs.
got it.
And in the summer, even though it's summer, I've come back up, LuAnn, because it's better for the sound in the too echoey downstairs.
Thank you.
But that's a lovely thing, that you can say. Have you thought about? You don't have to have an office. You can, you look in the garden in the summer while you're doing your meetings, or in the winter,
Mhm.
cozy by the fire. So, and that's one of the lovely benefits, I think, of being in the country. And maybe
Mhm.
people hadn't thought about that there's more flexibility.
Yeah. It's funny because that actually is a thing that we're going through, Vin and I, in our beach house right now. We bought this beach house. It's supposedly the end all be all, our final beach house. We've been, buying little ones and trading them up until we finally got to the bay and we can see the bay and all the things. And it's been terrific 25-year journey to do it. Um, but when we bought it, we were so enthralled with the views of the bay from the living room, from the primary bedroom, the space for the other bedrooms and the bathrooms for the kids and everything, that we didn't think about there's no place to work. There's no
Mm.
place to work. And Vin is very happy to just sit on the sofa in the living room with all of his stuff around him and work. And no, I need to sit at a table with my, papers and a pen and my Remarkable and my computer. And I don't want to be lounging half back on a sofa with my papers falling all over my lap. And we're actually working with Anastasia Harrison now, who's an architect here in New Jersey, on trying to convert an exterior upstairs patio to an interior
Hmm.
room so I can have an office, because I'm just like, I
Yeah.
it's like I go every weekend all year long. If I'm not out of town, we go to the house and I putz through with sitting at the kitchen table working. But, from a quality of life standpoint, thinking about spending 25 more years in that house, knowing I'm probably going to work for 20 of them, I'm just like, this is dumb.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because it's the writing and it's that type of work that, when podcasting is long done and nobody wants to hear me anymore, I'm sure I'll
Oh,
still be
that's a long
writing.
way off, LuAnn.
Right. So it's interesting. I don't know that it would have deterred us from buying the house if we had had a professional like you come in to really make us think about it. But we would have gone in with open eyes
Hmm.
then. And maybe from the beginning, you would have advised us on, well, how do we reconfigure this in order to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's helpful. Right. It's helpful. Okay.
The other thing.
Any other things in that? Yeah, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
was going to say about bedroom because, particularly like because we've moved so far away from London. If friends come up, they're going to stay the weekend. It's not just like they're popping in for lunch or something. So you need to think about bedrooms and guest bathrooms, and they're going to be there for 2 or 3 nights, and maybe at the end of the corridor there's a bit of space, or they've got
Yeah.
a bit of space in their room that they don't have to be with you 24/7. So that's another um,
Hmm.
thing to bear in mind about you need a lot of bedrooms.
Yeah. Well, and also too, what goes with bedrooms is the linen closet
Yeah,
for all of that
absolutely.
nonsense,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
I don't have a hallway linen closet.
yeah,
I've got a 5-bedroom house and I don't have a hallway linen closet. So, my master closet has 2 closets and I make one, but like my guests can't come get it themselves if
yeah.
they need another towel. They're not going to come traipsing through my bedroom and
Exactly.
bathroom to get it. So, and by the way, when you are fortunate enough to have a home and a country home or a lake house or a beach house, these are problems of what I always call princess of quite a lot. Like these are, isn't this so horrible? This problem you have, you little princess LuAnn, right? Like, oh, your guests don't have their own linen closet, right? But listen to me, if I were a luxury client that is having you come out as a designer and asking your advice
Yeah.
on what to do, and I'm at this stage where I'm willing to either have it renovated or just design, I want you to bring these questions up to me. I didn't realize there was no linen closet until the first time one of my kids is knocking on my door going, can I have a
Well,
towel?
yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah,
what?
yeah. No,
Right?
exactly. We've got that here. I always think we did the combination of the boot room and the laundry. So, industrial washer and dryer, because if you've got a
Yes.
house full of people, there's like more sheets and towels than you can wag a stick at.
That's it.
But that's sort of downstairs, so people can help themselves. The housekeeper can just like stock everything, and
Yeah.
Yeah, it's things you wouldn't occur to you, would it? And
That's
then
it.
it's actually
Even
quite
that right
important.
there, the industrial, like you
Yeah,
could be, oh, we're a family of 4, 2 little children and the 2 of us. We don't need a big
yeah,
laundry. We just need a regular washer and dryer. And you're like, right. But every time your in-laws or your parents or your friends come, they're coming for the whole weekend. And
yeah,
now it's a lot of laundry,
exactly.
right? And you need it all at once turned over,
Yeah.
right?
And then
So
because you're going to
interesting.
be out, you've got the hiking wardrobe, if you're on the beach, the swimming stuff, all that clobber.
Skeet shooting and
Exactly.
horseback riding, all the things you
Yeah.
do out in the
Yeah.
country.
There's, yeah, you need a lot of stuff and a lot of, big space to put it in.
That's it. I'm remembering, like, watching The Crown and watching Elizabeth, and all the out on the hunt. You know what I'm saying? It's like you just imagine what you live like over there. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So lots to think about. And really what it is most of this as interior designers probably get it, but it's just collating it maybe to a different type of Q&A or onboarding form that's different from your typical Q&A that you
Yeah,
might use for city dwelling is really the
exactly. Yeah.
point,
And
right?
and going back to your point about, the style of living in their townhouse and their country house, and you mentioned it before about, they might have a really sleek minimalist apartment in the city, and they think they need to do like a big chintzy floral thing, but it's not their style.
Mhm.
So one of the things I try and get across in the book, style wise, is that a country house doesn't have to be like that. It has to be
Mm,
practical. The materials used, the flooring, the drapes have to be hard wearing, because there's going to be dogs, there's going to be mud, there's going to be more people traipsing through than your townhouse. But it doesn't have to be that radically different, as long as
r
it's fit for purpose. The style of it, if you are minimal, if you are really contemporary, stay contemporary. You don't have to,
right.
go to antiques.
That
But
that's a good point, right? Because you need to still ultimately feel comfortable in your home. You're going to help with the advice and making it functional for the things that we don't know. But it's kind of like, I don't know if it's the whole world or it's just New Jersey, but every single beach house in New Jersey has to be like some reason decorated nautical, like as if we're not sure the beach is right down the block.
yeah,
It is the
yeah,
dumbest thing ever,
yeah,
you know? And like I said, Anastasia, she was just at my beach house yesterday as we're recording this. And I'm like, please don't look at the decor. Like it is nicely done, but it was done by a designer for rental. And I do not understand it. I do not understand that I have rented a house at the ocean. And when I get to this rental house at the ocean, over the sofa is a picture of the ocean. Like it's bonkers to me.
yeah,
Like, and so I'm like, I haven't weeded out all the nautical crap yet. Like, just don't look at it. So, and that's like accessories and decor. But it's your point is the same. It's like if you are minimalist, don't just design country rustic and think all of a sudden like I wouldn't be able to breathe.
yeah,
I wouldn't be able to breathe. I'd be like,
yeah,
oh my God, get all this crap away from me.
yeah,
Like, don't decorate every corner and don't have every sewing machine from the village in my living room as an antique
yeah,
decoration. Like,
yeah.
no.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, for
So,
an example, say if you like, those lovely sleek Italian sofas, and it's
mm,
cream boucle in your New York flat. Don't have the cream. You just have the same
right.
sofa if you want, if it's
Yes.
comfortable, you
Yeah.
like it, but have it in a darker fabric, or like
Yeah.
a washable fabric.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, just and that's good. And I agree with you that that is your job also as a designer to really cue us in if we're starting to follow silly trends that you've worked with us before and you're like, you're not going to like this,
mhm,
sweetie. You're going to get it all here. You're
yeah,
going to come home to your country house. You're going to like, whose house am I in?
yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, in our own house, because my husband's not a big antique fan, whereas I love them. So downstairs in the main hall, where it's big, it's like chock a block with antiques. So the deal is up here on the top floor. It's like white modern art, not many things. So
So
that's
it's a little
that's the deal.
ADD, your house, right? Like it doesn't know what it is. But that's awesome, right? Like you get it. You get each other, you respect
Yeah,
each other and that's awesome.
yeah.
You get to express your love for antiques and all of that downstairs where everybody can see it and say, "Oh, what a beautiful eye you have," right? And I'm sure it's just as beautiful upstairs, but you're doing it for your client then, who happens to be your husband,
Oh, that's what
right?
you have to do with it, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. And our London flat, no antiques. That was the deal.
That's so funny, right? Oh, it's so crazy when the spouses want to get involved in all that, right? It's
Yeah.
like, come on, just get out of my lane. Let me do my thing, right? Okay. Now, the other thing, and probably the trickier component of, is finding trusted trades and contractors and then understanding the nuances of maybe the way they approach work and contracts and schedules is different than those that we might be accustomed to in more urban areas, suburban areas, right?
Oh, it really is. I mean, because I'd worked with the, so he's just retired, because I'm so old. My contractor I worked with for 14 years is retired. And he said, oh, maybe we could bring a gang up and just whack it out. And I was like, and I was thinking, oh no, in the country, the labor's going to be much cheaper and they're going to be really grateful for this big job. No, I couldn't. It
No.
took me months to even find somebody to quote, and then they wouldn't really quote. It was an estimate, and I'm used to. And I think it's probably the same in the States, right? You get a main contractor, and then they're in charge of the trade. You know, the electrician, the plasterer, da da da. Here, he kind of was like a main contractor, but he, like, when the plastering was finished, then he'd phone the electrician, and of course the electrician would be busy for two. And I was like, schedule. When the plastering is finished, then the electrician should be in. And I was like moaning at him, and he said, Dean, if you're going to put me under this pressure, we can't work together. And I said, what do you mean? I've phoned you once in a week. I said, if you were in London, I'd be phoning you twice a day. You know what? And he said, and that, Dean, is why I'm not a London builder. Well, what could I say? That was end of conversation. Shut up, Dean.
That's so true. He's like, duh, I know that. That's why I'm out here in God's country.
Exactly.
I'm the only guy, and you have to do what I say and when I say it, or it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I must say, it was much slower than I thought, but the quality of the work is amazing, because it's a rural community. People are really reliant on their reputation, because if you do something wrong, the whole village knows about
Everybody
it.
knows it. Every housewife is going to tell every other
Exactly.
one, right?
So, I mean, I'm so pleased with the build. But there were some fun things, because, I had my London ways, like, in one of the bathrooms, I used these big format tiles on the floor, like a meter square. And the tiler turned up, and he was a lovely guy. And he said, oh my God. He said, they told me the tiles were a meter square. I'd never seen, I thought they were making up. And here they are.
The only thing you didn't say is, who's the bolo that specified this?
and then I wanted, I said to the contractor, oh, can you, the local sort of hardware place supplier, I found out, so can you send me a chart of your grouting colors for the tile? And they're like, a chart? I said, with all your different colors. They said, we've got white, gray, and cream. I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to have the grout
and it's
flown
not
up from
delivered,
London.
Dean. It's not delivered either. Come on in and look at it, buddy. Hop on your Shetland pony and come see it.
And this bathroom was like a wealth of stories that I'd found at a local auction, like an antique sideboard that I wanted to turn into a vanity unit. So I said, right.
Like, it's a sideboard, Dean.
So I said, I just want you to take the top off. I've got the stone guy coming. All you have to do is put the basins underneath, fix them, and the stone guy will come. Lovely. The plumber can put
easy peasy.
Easy peasy. I don't know what you mean. And I was like, just take the top off. But it's old. It's not straight. And I said, no, the stone will make it straight. You just make the no. And it took. I was trying to do it on the phone. I had to come up on the train 3 hours to later. And then they just shook their head and said, why don't you just buy new vanity basins?
I'll give you the phone number for Home Depot.
Exactly.
In London.
Exactly.
Oh my God, that's hysterical. It's funny, right? And there's a dance in there too, where, it's almost like going to a different country with different cultures and what you can say and not say that would be offensive to somebody, and what you would say in your city voice, like I call it inside voice, versus your country voice, because, it is just a slash. It's just a clash, to say, of a different way to look at it. And you can be surprised, but it doesn't mean you're intending to be disrespectful. But I would think that that's something you have to be aware of as the designer, right?
Because I really, I knew I was going to live here, so I didn't want to be that terrible city guy that came in and said, you're doing it all wrong. Yeah, you're 20 years
Green
behind.
Acres. He's Zsa Zsa Gabor, Green Acres.
Exactly. But the other advice I would give is, like, do listen to the local contractors, though, because they know the area. They know, like, especially on materials and stuff. It's an old house. They'll know where to source if you need a bit of extra stone because all the slates on the roof. So, as well as trying to bring your new ideas, you can learn a lot from them as well. For example, like, they know which way the wind blows. So if you've got a leak in the roof, they're like, oh yeah, because that was a northerly wind, so we'll look over there for the old, stuff like that you wouldn't even think of.
Right. You just pay somebody in the city to scorch every square foot of the roof and
Exactly.
finally the last inch. There it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's interesting too, because I would think they're like, when you say you are 3 hours north of London, right there on the Scottish border, the winters probably are ridiculous there, right? And so whatever it is, whether it's because of climate or because of, indigenous materials or whatever, I'm sure there's probably times when somebody is a good, knowledgeable contractor is like maybe let's take paint, for example. Do not use this kind of paint here.
Yep.
It's fine in London, but I'm telling you, buddy, it's not going to last here. And you're like, no, I really have to have my Ferro and Ball paint.
Exactly.
And, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that's the kind of thing. And parsing through that, right? Because I know the 35 years I did window treatments and I had to work with a gabillion different, designers, trades and contractors and stuff. There's times when an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter, it's like telling a designer something. And of course, I always kept my mouth shut, but I would be like, you're just saying that because it's easier to do. Like, who are you kidding? You know what I mean? But then there's times when you're like, you're not hearing what he's telling you. This thing is not going to perform here. It's like this conditions is too humid or too this or too that. So I would think that kind of knowledge is also valuable from the different trades you meet up there, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the lesson I learned many years ago when I first started. I was doing some tiling, and I'd done this meticulous tiling plan with these, I think it was early 2000s, so we did that multicolored thing, which looks so dated now, but I was so proud of it. And I had, this color here, a little color. And he said, the way you've drawn it, there's so many cuts, I could do a really similar effect, but if we just moved it along slightly. And I was like, yeah, great. So
wow.
I always, and to your point, yes, sometimes they want it because it's easier to do it that way. So that,
but you got to suss through that.
Yeah,
right?
suss through that. And there's like, or if they say that's impossible, I'm like, is it impossible or just difficult? But always listen too, because they know their job, right?
Yeah, because and to that point, we're talking about out there the north of England, but then I'm talking about my beach house. So there are going to be things that they're going to tell you, don't use this at the beach. I know you use it an hour away, but don't use it here, right? Yeah. So, and then what is the situation like? Have you found, now this will be different area to area, I'm sure, whether we're talking about the Berkshires in New York or Massachusetts, or we're talking about England, or we're talking about, the desert in California, wherever. But do you find that the trades are less cognizant? I know you talked about the one guy who didn't schedule the next trade until the first trade was done, which is, you're just like, I'm sorry, you could have scheduled these guys all out within a week of being right 2 months, 3 months ago, right? We might have had done some nudging, but we wouldn't be saying to the electrical guy, now come up, and he's like, well, I got 3 weeks till I could get there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that kind of thing happens. But how about individually working with them? Do you find where you are, there's a difference in, I'll be there Monday at 10 o'clock. And that's like, well, did I really say Monday? I meant but Thursday and I meant 12, or are they, time is good, it's just the staging that's tougher?
I think that was the bit I was strict on. Okay, I gave up on the schedule half of it, but if you're going to say you don't turn up, you need to turn up.
Okay.
And maybe I didn't realize how scary I am, because I never shout, but I have a sort of voice. And there's one thing that because I was trying to do it long distance to start with. That's only 3 hours on the train, and I try and do in bursts, right? This meeting, electrician. And then, if something hadn't happened for like 3 times after it, I was like, this is the third time this is serious. So I do think, and again, it's another tip for designers that are used to just working for a client in the city. You need to be there at least some of the time. I think
Mm,
it's just really difficult to do it remotely all the time and also
mm,
they need to get to know you properly, that you're not such a
mm.
monster, but that you're not going to be messed around too much, because there's another
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. That sounds like it's like really just trying to set good expectations
Yeah,
at the beginning of the project. And then just like anything, somebody's going to push the boundaries.
yeah,
And if we can say with honesty, hey, we talked about this before we got started,
yeah,
that I'm going to come up every 2 weeks and I've got 3.5 hours once I'm here.
yeah,
And, I've got a train to get back. You can't say 10 and show up at 2 because then I miss you for another. That means we have a month in between meetings,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anything else come to mind, Dean, is advice and tips for designers working with clients in, different locales? I think we're mostly talking about when doesn't have to be just the client that you've done work for in one place and now another,
Mm.
but it's more the person isn't used to that place. I think that's what it is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's a new environment for the client.
The other thing, it's not even really a design thing. It's about, how you're going to settle into that community when you are living there, or that um, it's where, again, listening to people, not just the builders, but, what color you're going to paint the front of the house. Because if it's that, I don't know if it's the same in States, that there's like a sort of, I suppose like in Malibu, it's those pastel color, so there's like a certain expectation of you don't go radically different
Oh,
from the
I see
neighbor.
what you're saying.
So, talk to the neighbors as well as the builder to make sure you're not doing, it might be inadvertently that you actually really
Yeah.
upset all the neighbors because you painted something pink and they only do greens, and that, it really helped me. People said, oh, it's gonna take you years to settle in, make friends, but we didn't, because I mean, it was a 3-year project, so even before we moved in, I was here a lot. But just talking to people and asking their opinions, you don't have to take it, but just, there might
Right.
be a reason why that you don't want to paint that pink, because like a certain bird will fly into it or something, again,
There
something
are
us
weird
townies wouldn't think
reasons,
of.
right? I have a question for you on that. What if you had a client that wanted to move from London and, it was their dream to build a, mid-century modern home out, now maybe it's not next door to the next castle there in
Mm,
Scotland, but it's 2 acres away or 3 acres away. Like I can see that being abrupt to the people that have lived there for centuries,
yeah.
right? Their families. But also, there's a sort of like, it's my 5 acres and I'll kind of do what I want about it. What do you think about that?
Well,
It's not something I ever thought of before.
do you know what? It's funny you should say that, because I was thinking about this podcast and how the difference between the UK and the States. So I wanted to make it so that it wasn't just talking about England, that maybe some of your listeners would do a job there once. But we have so many more planning regulations than you do,
Oh,
because the equivalent of is the National Register of Historic
yes.
Places. I
Yes.
was just looking, and our equivalent is listed buildings. So if they're listed, and there's like over 300,000 listed buildings just in England, never mind Scotland or Ireland. And and this one is, so there are really strict rules about what you can do and what you can't do. Not just, never mind building a new house. This is doing what you want to your old house.
Yeah.
So,
So it's not a matter of if your neighbor, Mrs. O'Cleary, likes it or not. It's
no,
literally governed.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
It's so funny because where was I just in the last week? I was driving and there was one of those like yard signs, like like political signs that people puts in their thing, but it said something to the effect of do away or cancel or close or something the historical society in town,
Oh,
like the preservation or something. And I almost had to stop my car and drive back, but I didn't because, I'm already 15 minutes down the road and I'm just like, keep it rolling. But I thought to myself, what is that? That is literally that. And I'm not driving through Bath, England here. It's a regular suburb in New
yeah,
Jersey.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I thought to myself, how many historical homes could there be in this silly town?
Mm,
25 or 30. It's not like I was even down in South Jersey by Burlington, where Ben Franklin lived, right outside of Philadelphia, where there's streets and streets that are literally from the 1700s, right? And so I was just like, is that just like 2 or 3 people in town that happen to have a home that has some sort of historical designation to it, and they wanna knock it down and make it a split level? Like, I was just like, "What is
Mm.
that?" It was so crazy.
In your interview with Kate Wood, who's the historic
Yeah.
specialist, I was really laughing because, she was telling about the rope windows.
Yes.
So, because this house is listed and the windows were rotten, they were rope windows, but I had to put back brand new rope windows, even though,
It's
as you know, they leak, and and I think we've kind of too far the other way that
Yeah, yeah.
mad things like that you could have it looks the same, it's a wooden frame, fair enough, I get it, you want the front of the
But
house at the
actually
same.
be air and watertight.
Yeah. And I think we have this because we've got this targets to be carbon neutral by 2050, and that means houses have got to be better insulated. Well, you can't be saying to somebody in a big old house you can't have double glazed windows because it's not in keeping with the 17th
Yeah,
century. We're not in the 17th century, and as long as it
right.
looks a bit, I'm going to get told off if people in England hear this, but I feel really strongly about it. I think we're probably the last generation of people that will put up with being in a leaky house just because it's a beautiful house. Our kids would be
Yes,
like, I want to be warm, and I don't want to
right.
spend a fortune on the
And you're
oil
also
bill.
putting my feet to the fire on this carbon
Exactly.
reducing carbon,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's a funny thing, like, Kate and the people who are her clients, it matters to them,
Yeah.
right? They want that. They are, like, seeking a person who
Yes.
understands and wants it. But it's a different story if you happen to own a historic home, and to your point, you are interested in preserving it and rehabilitating it, and even if you want the rope windows, how can you also then observe the other
Mm.
rules that the government is enforcing on? That's very interesting. It's a logical point that I hadn't, considered. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? That's crazy pants. Yeah, when she first when I was coaching her, that was the breakthrough moment because I kept saying, "What do you do? What do you do?" And anybody who has coached with me, if I and with Chloe, the same thing. It's 7 years ago, 2017. I'm like, what do you do? What do you do?
Mm.
And she kept telling me, but I'm looking at her website. I'm like, but your website is all dental offices. You didn't say one thing about I
I didn't
love
realize
today's
about the
dent.
Chloe and the
Oh
dentist.
my
That was funny.
God. Every picture was some kind of mostly dental offices and other, types of things, and a couple of restaurants. And I'm like, because I'm all getting ready for my first coaching session with her. So I'm reading her website top to bottom, and I'm thinking, okay, this lady over here, she's the go-to boutique, you know, what's the word I want for like physicians type of a
Yeah.
person. And I'm like framing all my questions like around this. And she's like, that's not what I want to do. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And so that was the thing with Kate. We kept trying to tell me, and she kept doing it through the lens of interior designer. And then she's like, well, finally, she's just like a lot exasperated in a mean way, but exasperated herself. She was just like, how can I explain it to you? Like, if your house originally had rope windows, then I'm with you. I want your house to have rope windows again. And I was like, wait, what? And I'm like, that's not a designer's job. That's not it. Like,
Mm.
no, no, you are the one to help the designer because the designer's going to be like, I got a lunatic who wants rope windows. Where am I going to go? Right.
Yeah.
And I love Kate and I love all of her clients and all the things they love, but she knows I have fun at their
Yeah.
expense. It's beautiful though, the work that she does. It really is. She's
Yeah.
got a book out too. Did you know
No,
that
no. Oh,
Oh, you got to get her book.
oh, that's
Oh, it's on my desk. It's not here in the studio with me.
okay.
But it's a you will
And she was
love
so
her book.
passionate. I like Chloe. I love people who have that real passion. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, her book is just like your book is. It's informative, but pleasure to read, and it's like the architecture of New York City. I forget what it's exactly called, but it is outstanding, and it is scholarly
Yeah.
but readable. Same thing. You would love it. You have to get it.
Okay, will do.
Anyway, so what else can we say? Is there anything that we left unturned about this idea of being basically the leader in the project and the conversation when clients are thinking about going off, away from their normal routine and their normal lifestyle and investing lots of money in a new location, right?
Yeah. No, I think, as you said before, you don't want to tragically change their lifestyle, but just the things that happen in the country, whether you like it or
Yeah.
not. So, and I always think, back to another one of your interviews with Vincent Wolf about, he wouldn't let his clients have change even one pillow because it was like a concerto. And I was thinking, well, I'd love to be that brave with my client. But then I was thinking, and it really stuck in my head. And I was thinking the next day, but like, so it's like a concerto at the thing, and it's a masterpiece. If you change one note, and I was thinking, yeah, but the New York Philharmonic aren't playing every night in your living room, are they? So but you have to sit in your living room every night. And I was like, I always think you have to remember it's the client's house as well. So
Yes.
so you can. And I think, funny enough, the more I like the ones I really fight with, are the ones I like, because I want them to have the best thing, and then ones that they'll like, and the
Yeah.
ones that I just think, oh yeah, to have that white sofa in the country,
Yeah,
and then
okay,
come back to
whatever.
me in
You're
3
gonna
months when
ruin
it
it.
needs
Yeah.
recovering,
Because you can, like Vinny always says, you can lead somebody. You can't make them do it.
Yeah.
Right. And if they keep saying, oh, I have to have a white sofa, and you're like, great, a Great Dane and a Shetland and all the things, like, forget it. It's going to be garbage. Right. Yeah. We have that in window treatments too. People will say, oh, this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, 16 ways from Sunday. It's like, that's not going to give you the function that you asked for.
Well,
and then I have my salespeople ask me all the time, what do I do if they ultimately want to buy something that is at cross purposes to what they've told me the function is? And I said, you just have to be very clear that, this is against your function. This will not do what you want to do. And most of the time, someone will back up. But every once in a while, like maybe there's 3 times in 35 years, I've written on my invoice, this is not what I suggested. You know what I mean? So when you get it in and you're like, this doesn't work, I'm like, you're right. I know it.
Because going back to the real thing, like you'll know this, but the Lutron electronic controlled blinds and curtains and things.
Yeah.
Well, it all works on broadband or Wi-Fi. So if you're in the country and the power goes off, then you're not only you can't even open your blinds. So,
oh my
and
gosh.
the conference that Chloe and I met at was all these. The whole thing was home automation. So it was the latest in lighting and speakers and home cinemas. And there were these panels, and it was getting very, very techy. With the designers were like, I just want it to look pretty as well. I don't want to see the speakers, and I don't want to see the cabling. But they were like, yeah, it's all very well, but I live in such and such, and it goes off. The power goes off sometimes, and we can't be stuck. So
yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing, because I don't think, it wasn't international. It was US. Canada did it like a year ago. And then the US just went June 1st to no cords, no cord locks for shades. And so because of the child safety hazards with it. And we're now, as an industry, for the window treatment industry, you're looking at grandma who can't reach her shade over her kitchen sink, but at the same time can't figure out how to make the remote control work. You know what I mean? Like, it's nonsense. It's insanity. And so you don't have that in England yet, like laws against
no, we've got the height
shades
thing.
And stuff.
It has to be a certain level so the kids don't get it, but then you can still have a cord.
Okay, so maybe it's a couple of years behind.
Probably,
but that's interesting, because I never even thought about the rural places in the US that Wi-Fi isn't necessarily guaranteed. And listen, don't send me an email. I know there's certain ways around certain things. I get it. Like, you know what I'm saying? But for the most part, it is going towards everything being cordless, like handspring operated or motorized, whether it's battery or hardwired in. But the hand lift thing doesn't work if you're 85 years old and it's over your kitchen sink. And like the motorized shades in my house, sometimes I'm just like, I was at my kid's house the other day and I couldn't figure out how to make the bottom up, top down part of the motorization work. And I'm just like, Lucy, 6 years old, Luce, how do you do this? So anyway, so much to consider. I love your insights on this, Dean. It's awesome. And one day when I come to the UK, now Chloe's going to have to wrangle you over there for that meeting too.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, come up. We'll find your bedrooms, as I said, and easy to get to towels.
Then there's a little place for me to sit if I don't want to visit with you, and I can get my laundry done all by myself.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Thanks so much for being on the show today,
It was
Dean.
an absolute pleasure. Thank you.